All right, welcome to another episode from the Chart Reader. So, I have three main tickers I want to talk about, but there are two kind of auxiliary tickers that I might throw in. So, I want to talk about hymns, pony, and OKLO. That's my one, two, three. With pony, we ride WRD seems like an interesting one, and then with OKLO, looking at NNE is always an interesting thing to do, right? So there's five total that I'm probably gonna look at. And then my plan is to, on this opening thoughts, kind of focus on the indices, mainly the S&P 500 and Nasdaq, and then get into the tickers after the intro, right? So, but real quick, I mean, you can kind of see it. Hims with a nice follow through over all the moving averages, loving that volume, that's for sure, right? Pony's been on a big, nope, not P up. That's not a good one. Sometimes the typos bring good charts, but Pony's been on a tear, right? It really has been, right? So in a lot of ways, I'm definitely late to it. Most of this red, actually all of the red has already turned into green, right? But we're coming on that IPO line. We're basically at a really important candle right now. And if we break this green, red might take us up to 20, right? So Pony's an interesting one. And then, like I said, We Ride has a real little interesting red, green. It's also kind of related with that, right? So OKLO, I missed. I just caught this one in the Discord. It looks like there was an interesting White House comment about nuclear deployment. So hey, I mean nuclear OKLO and nuclear NNE, right? So that's a real nice candle and reaction to it, and really you can see it. It was all in the last 2 hours. The news dropped about 2 hours ago, right? So yeah, that perfectly lines up, and you can see the volume that came once the Nasdaq, once the president comments on nuclear hit, right? NNE literally says the word nuclear in it. Same nice candle, same nice 2 hours of volume right there, right? So really, I think all of these are basically worth looking at, and I'll get into the details shortly. What's really big right now is Nasdaq and S&P 500, right? So when I look at QQQ, it's the exact mirror chart of Nasdaq. Nasdaq is now back on that 8 moving average, right? We opened at it actually down here, and then we make our way up and close up there. So in a little bit of a way, you can kind of say, hey, maybe we're starting to kind of bounce on the line, but this is nothing, right? I need tomorrow to bounce. I need tomorrow to get us back to like at least 17.7, right? I'm basically clicking at 17,760. Yeah, 17.7. That's $4 less than the open right there. That's what we need tomorrow. Otherwise, I'm real worried that we're gonna lose the 8 and come down to the 50 moving average. That's the exact same look on Nasdaq. On sorry, on the S&P 500, right? This is a picture perfect doji on the line, and really the gap between the 8 and the 20 is not that far right there. Sorry, the 8 and the 50, excuse me, right? So the real fear is coming back to that 50 moving average. You lose that, it's a quick fall to that, and I mean there's a green to red right behind that, right? So the bigger picture, and I'm zooming out, right, is this double cluster, right? SPY, QQA, no, QQQ, yes, right? They both have that 100 and 200 cluster on the daily that they just couldn't do. It kind of seems like they've basically rejected it so far, right? Hey, the eight moving average is a very strong line, and hopefully we'll bounce it up. But if these come down, there's going to be some worry on tickers, right? So I think what makes this interesting bunch of three or five, depending on how much I cover, they each have a little bit of interesting momentum to themselves, right? So believe me, I'm never a fan of just about any ticker if the indices are doing well. But maybe while we're still kind of bouncing and deciding what we're gonna do, maybe these five can do something, right? So like I said, I'm not a fan of either indice right now. It's been a nice climb. There's been some great moments to take advantage of, right? And that's what I was talking about not that long ago. We look for the eye of the storm. This seemingly what I think I was expecting one bigger something. I don't know, but yeah, this was a good eye of the storm. I don't know if we're about to go down or we can kind of prolong it, right? So I think that's some good, decent market thoughts. I guess real quick, let me just look at the Dow Jones, right? DJ 30. Oh, sorry, excuse me, DJ 30. Yeah, look at this. Actually, this never even got over the 50. You can tell that I really don't look at the Dow Jones that much. I honestly had no idea. I assumed it got over the 50 and try to get a little bit closer to the same two right there. This never gets over the 50. Interesting. Wow. Um, and then losing the 8 would actually take us down to the 20, which was seemingly inevitable on those other two if that 50 was lost, right? So, yeah, I think knowing that the Dow Jones itself never got over the 50 and those other two are just kind of struggling to stay over it, I don't know. I think I'm believing less and less that this recovery is going to be sustained, and it really was just an eye of the storm right there. So, um, cool. I think that's a good opening thoughts right there. Before we do go any further and I give you more of my thoughts, what are we going to do? Same thing we always do, right? We'll take a look at the daily and the weekly to see how these things are setting up short term. We have our 5 moving averages. I know I have some. They're probably down here. No, I don't have any. I will draw some horizontal support and resistance lines manually myself. And then when we are done up here, we'll use the MACD, RSI, and volume as our lower indicators. Hey, really quickly, if you can, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video online with your friends. Comment good or bad if you disagree. Look, anything you can do helps so much with these YouTube algorithms. But for real, just being here, giving me your time, oh, I'm so grateful for it, all right? So, look, I do my very best to stay impartial with tickers. All right, I like to believe that these technical lines and the colorful little lines here keep me as unbiased as possible. I have been talking about hymns for a really long time, and honestly, I you would think I would like practice this thing and like set it up. Let's go back to 26. No, that's too far back. That's in 23. But look, and then that's all hymns. That's the poor right there execution. I was talking about hymns, I think back in the 13s. I know I was talking about hymns around the 20 somethings, and I mean, it just keeps going and going. You know what I mean? So I personally have a nice little love for this ticker, but again, I'm here to be as impartial as I can. And I think the main reason I have a good liking for this stock is so many different people call this a pharmaceutical disruptor. And there is arguably no bigger industry than pharmaceuticals. You know what I mean? They had a Super Bowl commercial, if I'm not mistaken. You know what I mean? So this is not some little company. You know what I mean? Like I just there's a lot to like here. All right. So on the technical side, I mean, you can see it. We are over all five, right? You break all five, you fly. I always say volume is king, volume is queen for the ladies watching this. And I mean, that's a beautiful steady climb with a nice push above it, right? And it was all driven by yesterday's earnings, right? And I flashed it in the opening thoughts. I hope it's still here, easy to see, beautiful. It was a good earnings from what we saw yesterday. And honestly, we were a little confused that it was dropping so much, right? Like when you beat earnings per share and by a lot too, right? It was expected to be 12. A 50% gain on that would have been 18. They were more than 50%. They were at 20 cents, right? So that's a real big earnings per share beat right there, actually. You can see revenues up over 100%, net income 300, right? You see these numbers, right? So it was really good. I think the one thing that was maybe why it dropped, and I talked about it on yesterday's video, when we looked at the S&P 500 close, that last hour was really bad. And hey, it made a lot of sense that we gapped down this morning, right? Like there was a lot of fear going into that last hour of not just the SPY but the QQQ as well, same as Nasdaq, and you can see that same gap down. And then the DIA, right? Same thing, scary last hour, and then down here, right? So maybe a little bit of the hymns reaction was just that, a real scary, close, a reaction to the gap down. But hey, the good earnings did what the good earnings did, right? And volume came, and at this point, honestly, it feels like the next place that it wants to go is probably 53. If I had to put a guess right there, right, I would draw that line right there. No, that's a little too low. That's probably good. Perfect. Same 53 number. If you break 53, I mean, from there, that's the next line. And truth be told, I would make this the golden line. I think you break this and it's going to be all time highs from there. Obviously, all time high is that top of the wick right there, right? But this thing gets over 59 and there's going to be nothing stopping it, right? And I'm zooming back to show it. There's nothing stopping it over there, right? Like green, 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 red, 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 green, 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 if that line breaks right there, right? So we have a little bit of a high RSI on the daily. We have a very low RSI on the weekly, right? So this kind of makes me think that this is going to have some good weeks coming. Remember though, and I said it in the opening thoughts, if I don't think QQQ is one, if SPY starts to fail on the weekly, I'd be a little bit worried. I would, right? But again, I said it in the beginning. Hims has enough momentum. Let me just look at this volume, right? We've never had this much volume. The volume keeps growing, and I mean, it's just going, right? So volume is king. Volume is queen for the ladies watching it, and maybe there's a little bit for this thing to break away. And I think I want to compare this to Palantir, but I think that's offensive to Palantir. But Palantir can do well when the NASDAQ doesn't, right? I think this earnings was also something that scared some people, right? And I said yesterday, don't lose 116. Look at that. We're down to 108, right? Makes sense to me. Um, but yeah, I think as this was able to break all time highs and run, like I feel like Hims is in that $40 world that Palantir was not that long ago. And if you saw my quick like flash, Palantir had a golden line around 40. This one's at 50, and you saw what happened after, right? So this one has a little special place in my heart. Hey, at the minimum, we're over all five moving averages. We're over the 8 and the 20, and that is what matters. Hey, I would be really worried if this, and I mean that's too big a number, right? I would say the first real oh my gosh line is probably going to be 44. If we lose 44, it'll actually be a pretty quick fall down into the 30s. But like I said, I think there's reason to think that we're going to go to 53, maybe even try to push 59 as the uptrend uncertainties kind of continue, right? FOMC should be soon. Give me 1 sec. Let me pause this and open up a screen. 1 sec. Did I pause it? I don't even know if I paused it. I don't think I did. Whatever. So FOMC is gonna be in a day, right? So basically, this time in a few hours ago would have passed, right? So maybe this will help dictate what happens, and with that, right? But um, yeah, I didn't really need to show that. But yeah, I think I like my thoughts here. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions, even if you disagree. Let's take a quick look at Pony. And I mean, a lot going on with Pony. And I think the coolest thing of it is there's not a lot of history here, right? And when you don't have a lot of history, but you have enough moving averages and you have some lower indicators, you can start to do some interesting things, right? And what was a whole mess of red, red, red has quickly gotten turned to that green, green, green that we love, right? And another thing you hear me say often is when the channels between the lines, when the spacing between the lines, the channels, from the 8 to the 20, look at that space. From the 20 to the 50, look at that space. And just a bunch of red, red, red and nothing, nothing, nothing behind it. Oh man, that's exactly what will happen with volume. And you can see the power of the 8 moving average. We go up, we get rejected on the 50, we come down, but the 8 moving average does a job and leads us all the way up, right? So a lot to like on the technicals here. Clearly a lot to not like back in the day. And hey, you lose them all, whether it's 3 or 5, and you can see the bad that happens after, right? So many technical things that I say on just about every single ticker are happening right now, right? So I think there was also a real nice Uber connection with this one. And you hear me say often when a small stock can connect to a big one, an established one, that's way better for the small one than the big one, right? Like Uber, I'm sure they're making deals with a whole mess of companies, right? Like for Pony AI to get connected to Uber, that is actually real huge, right? So today's candle gets us not only over the 50, but actually the 100 as well, right? And I think that's going to be our first down mark. I think this might come back down to 1240. Hopefully we never go below 1240. And realistically, this line right here, let me see if I can click somewhere better. Okay, look. Around 1325 is the bottom of this, it's the top of that, and it's the bottom of that, right? It was all between that 1325 range. I think that's going to be a pretty important line that you can put just before that 1240 number. And then from there, we don't want to lose that because that'll take us quickly down to the tens, and that's for sure not the goal, right? But realistically, if this can get over, and I'm actually going to set that alert. Look, an alert is not an immediate buy notification, but if we can get over 520, and you just saw me click it, it's half of this and basically that top of that, right? It's 515, sorry, 15, not 5. If this can get over 1520, 1525, give or take, there's a real nice chance that this will probably go into the 2021 range, and that's almost a 50% move, right? You're basically adding 7 right there. So liking the MACD, liking the RSI, really it's going to be all about volume, right? We were at 20 on yesterday was Monday. Wow. We were at 20 at Monday. Wow, we were 20 million yesterday. We basically 3x up to 60, give or take, right? We're just below the biggest peak right there, and obviously the biggest volume ever, right? So if we can get over this number here, the 70 million, that's going to be big. And we basically need more than 10 million shares per hour, right? There's a 7-hour trading day. So if you're seeing around 10 to 20 million shares come those first 2 hours, oh, there's a real good chance that this one's gonna go. All right. I think the other one to watch, just really quick, I want to flash it, is weride. Okay. Again, I don't think there was any news on this one that I saw, but look, a lot of the same setup. A whole mess of red, 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 and nothing, nothing, nothing. Nice channel between here, nice channel between there, right? So I think there's actually a decent chance for this thing to come into the 12s. That's not a bad place to be from the nines, right? On the low side, I can see this coming down to 820. All right. Don't lose 820. That would be really bad because I could actually see it falling into the sevens from there. All right. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions, even if you disagree. Last two, I'm going to quickly cover are OKLO and NNE. Look, I also, again, I just did the disclaimer on hymns. I'm going to do this disclaimer here. I do my best to be impartial, right? I like to say live and die by the lines, and they're all random 3 to 5 letters. I like the nuclear sector. I think it's a really, really interesting little sector, and it touches so many important tech sectors, right? The amount of power we need to do the amount of powerful things we want to do. Oh my goodness, we need something more than just wind, right? Or whatever we have now. Nuclear seems to be that answer. And what was, and it's one of my favorite sayings actually, what used to be Chernobyl fears are really turning into new scientific hopes and an interesting energy. You know what I mean? So I have a little love for this sector, but again, I'm here looking at the lines, I'm here looking at the volume, and what I saw was a real big 2 hour volume spike on OKLO and NNE, and it was all driven by boom right here. Are on a nuclear headline from the White House. Hey, I completely agree. They are very dependent on Nasdaq. But hey, maybe this news, man, that's a beautiful one too from you right there, right? Like, I think that there's an interesting White House juice here. There's real interesting volume that came from it, right? But is it going to fizzle away? Was it just a one quick something, or is there more here, right? Truth be told, I would probably focus more on Nasdaq than on this White House thing, because hey, Trump's comment are very forward looking. right? Like we have a pretty long time between here and there, and I don't know if anything immediate's going to get signed or not. I think we need to see how the rumor mill plays, right? And tomorrow's volume will dictate it. One thing I know for sure is if Nasdaq goes down, that will go down unless there really is some extra juice in this news, all right? So I'm kind of answering it both ways. So if volume says the news is good enough, that's the answer, right? Otherwise, it is just going to dictate what NASDAQ does, right? So, what am I looking for? Honestly, the answer starts down here at volume. I want to come back to that 24 million shares, right? If I need 24 million shares in a 7 hour day, I want to be close to 4 million shares per hour. If we can get close to that, I think that is what's going to make me believe moving averages are going to break and this and that, right? Let's use this line. I would use 31 bucks, and honestly I think that's where I'm going to set my alert. If this thing can get over 31, there is a lot of green 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 to red 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 up into the 50s, right? So I don't mind waiting a couple bucks to see if if the headline from the White House doesn't build enough big rumors, it's probably going to fall back to 25, right? Because we saw this fail the 50. We saw this probably going to fail the 50 if the news didn't drop, right? Because where were we? We were, yeah, we were trying to hold the 50 here. Where's your 15 minute at? Before the last 2 hours. Before the last 2 hours, look at this. I think this is the view that matters. Before that 2 p.m. spike, right? This thing looked like it was ready to lose these lines and probably head back down to the 100 to the 200 moving average down here at 24. I do think that this volume did help us, escape all of them go and even on here, right? But yeah, if the news just doesn't it get more, we're coming back to that 25 range, and then Nasdaq will kind of dictate the rest. So, same thoughts with NNE. All right, if the news is good enough, and if the volume is good enough, and I think good enough volume is going to be around 7 million. Maybe I'm willing to call it 5 million because that's a 2x still, but let's just use 7 million, right? I need 1 million shares per hour. If we can get that much volume, I think there's a good chance that we might go to 27, maybe even retest to 29, all right? Otherwise, I don't know if even 23 is going to stop it, and I can see it actually coming back to 2280. I could see that whole candle kind of going away because again, I imagine that whole candle came in that, and it did, right? That whole last thing came in that right there. Otherwise, it was pretty much a flat day today. So, watch volume. That'll tell us what the news means. All right. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions. Even if you disagree, oh, I appreciate you so, so much.